rooms, but in the quiet moments of personal revelation. One such moment was brewing, a seismic event set into motion by a single, life-altering piece of news: Jacinda was pregnant. The father was Michael Corinthos, a scion of one of the city's most powerful and tumultuous families. This pregnancy, under any circumstances, would have sent ripples through the complex social fabric of the town. But this was no simple, joyous announcement. It was a secret, a ticking time bomb wrapped in desperation and hope, and its fuse was about to be lit by the one person who could unravel everything: Carly. To understand the gravity of this situation, one must first understand the players. Michael Corinthos, son of the formidable Carly and the legendary mob figure Sonny Corinthos, had endured a life of extraordinary highs and devastating lows. His journey to adulthood was scarred by violence, loss, and betrayal. He had fought tirelessly to carve out an identity separate from his father's dark legacy, building a reputation as a principled, if sometimes rigid, businessman at ELQ and as a devoted father to his son, Wiley. His heart, however, remained a battlefield. His relationship with Willow Tate, Wiley's mother, had evolved from a marriage of convenience into a deep, abiding love, a partnership forged in shared trauma and unwavering mutual support. They represented a hard-won stability, a sanctuary from the chaos that so often defined life in Port Charles. Jacinda, by contrast, was a relative newcomer, a figure who had entered their orbit with a specific purpose. She was not a central pillar in the community like Carly or Sam, but rather someone on the periphery, whose connection to Michael was complex and layered. Perhaps she was an old acquaintance, a business associate from his ELQ days, or someone linked to a past chapter of his life that everyone assumed was firmly closed. She was perceptive, understood the dynamics of the powerful families, and saw in Michael not just a man, but an opportunity. Her pregnancy was not the result of a grand, sweeping love affair, but rather a single, consequential moment, a lapse in judgment, a night of unexpected vulnerability, a mistake with everlasting repercussions. When Jacinda first confirmed her condition, her initial emotion was likely not joy, but sheer, unadulterated panic, quickly followed by a cold, calculating assessment of her options. She knew the landscape. She knew that Michael was deeply, publicly committed to Willow. She knew the Corinthos family's reputation for ferociously protecting their own. To announce this pregnancy openly would be to declare war on one of the most formidable units in the city. She would be painted as a gold digger, an interloper, a homewrecker. The social ostracization would be immediate and brutal. And so, she made a choice. She would keep the pregnancy a secret, at least for a while. She would bide her time, gather her resources, and plan her approach. This child was her leverage, her ticket to financial security and a place within the powerful Corinthos sphere, but she had to play her cards perfectly. The secret became her constant companion, a hidden weight that shaped her every interaction, her every word. Her strategy was likely multifaceted. She might have begun with subtle manipulations, testing the waters with Michael. A chance meeting at the Metro Court, a seemingly innocent conversation that lingered a little too long, a veiled reference to changes and new beginnings. She would study his reactions, looking for any sign of softness, any crack in his devotion to Willow that she could exploit. Perhaps she even entertained the fleeting, foolish hope that he might leave his stable, loving relationship for the uncertainty she represented. But Michael, grounded in his love for Willow and his son, would have been polite, distant, entirely unaware of the bombshell she carried. His obliviousness would have only fueled her anxiety and her determination. The secret was a burden growing heavier by the day, both physically and emotionally. Meanwhile, life for Michael and Willow continued in its deceptively peaceful rhythm. They were a portrait of domestic bliss, co-parenting Wiley, supporting each other's careers, attending family dinners at the Corinthos compound. They were planning a future, perhaps discussing expanding their family, their love a quiet fortress against the outside world. Willow, with her innate kindness and gentle strength, was the moral center for many, especially Michael. Having survived her own battles with illness and deception, she valued honesty and transparency above all else. The idea that a secret of this magnitude was lurking just beyond their doorstep would have been inconceivable to her. The very foundation of their happiness was about to be tested in the most brutal way imaginable. This is where Carly Spencer enters the picture, not as a peripheral figure, but as the catalyst. Carly is a force of nature. Her entire life has been a masterclass in survival, in loving fiercely, and in waging war to protect her family. Her instincts are honed to a razor's edge, a combination of a mother's intuition and a general's strategic mind. She can sense a shift in the wind, a subtle change in demeanor that signals danger. She had fought too hard and lost too much for her son's happiness to let it be threatened by anyone or anything. It is impossible to pinpoint the exact moment Carly's suspicion was first aroused. Perhaps it was at a party at the Metro Court, where she noticed Jacinda watching Michael with an intensity that went beyond casual interest. Maybe it was a piece of town gossip, an offhand comment from a waiter or a business contact that something was going on with Jacinda. Or perhaps it was simply a mother's instinct, a feeling in her gut that something was off. Carly, unlike others, does not dismiss these feelings. She investigates them. Her investigation would have been characteristically Carly, direct, relentless, and ruthlessly efficient. She would have begun with discreet inquiries. She might have pulled Diane Miller aside, leveraging her legal connections for information. She might have had a trusted employee at the Metro Court keep an eye on Jacinda's movements. She would have replayed every recent interaction she'd witnessed between Michael and Jacinda, searching for a hidden meaning in a glance or a touch. She is a collector of information, and she would have begun piecing together a puzzle whose full picture she couldn't yet see. The breakthrough likely came from a combination of observation and confrontation. Maybe she saw Jacinda, looking pale and unwell, discreetly avoiding certain foods or drinks. Perhaps she overheard a cryptic phone conversation. Or maybe, in a moment of brilliant, brazen intuition, she simply looked at Jacinda and saw what others missed. Carly has never been one to shy away from a direct confrontation when she feels it is necessary. She would have cornered Jacinda, using her formidable presence to intimidate and disarm. She wouldn't have accused her of being pregnant outright at first. She would have probed, needled, and applied pressure, watching for the cracks to appear. The confrontation itself would have been a masterpiece of high-stakes drama. Carly, a whirlwind of barely contained energy and suspicion, facing off against Jacinda, who is trying desperately to maintain her composure while her world threatens to implode. "You've been quiet lately, Jacinda," Carly might have begun, her tone deceptively light. "Everything okay? You look a little tired." Jacinda's response would be rehearsed, brittle. "I'm fine, Carly. Just busy." But Carly would press, her eyes missing nothing, the slight tremor in Jacinda's hand, the way her jacket was buttoned just a little too high. "You know, if there's something going on, you can talk to me. This is a small town. Secrets have a way of surfacing." The air would grow thick with unspoken words. Jacinda would try to deflect, to leave, but Carly would be a wall. The pressure would mount until, finally, the dam would break. Maybe Jacinda, overwhelmed by fear and the physical toll of her secret, would become visibly ill. Maybe, in a moment of panic, she would let a crucial detail slip. Or maybe, seeing the inexorable truth in Carly's eyes, she would simply break down and confess, the words tumbling out in a desperate, tear-filled torrent. "I'm pregnant. It's Michael's." In that single, stark sentence, the world would shift for Carly. The air would leave the room. All her suspicions, her mother's fear, would be confirmed in the worst possible way. The initial shock would be a physical blow, but it would be quickly replaced by a torrent of other emotions, white-hot rage, a profound sense of betrayal on behalf of her son and Willow, and a cold, chilling fear for the future of their family. The immediate aftermath of the revelation would be chaos, but a controlled chaos dictated by Carly's will. Her first, most primal instinct would be containment. This information was a volatile substance that could not be allowed to spill out uncontrollably. She would have to manage Jacinda, the bearer of this destructive truth. Her approach would be a complex mix of threat and pragmatic negotiation. "You will not say a word to anyone. Do you understand me?" Carly's voice would be low, dangerous, every word a shard of ice. "You have no idea what you're messing with. You think this is a game? This is my son's life. This is Willow's life. My grandson's life." She would loom over Jacinda, making it abundantly clear that any move Jacinda made would be met with an overwhelming response. She would detail the consequences, social, financial, legal. Carly Corinthos is not a woman to be trifled with, and in this moment, she would ensure Jacinda felt the full, terrifying weight of that reality. Yet, intertwined with the threat would be a reluctant, grim acknowledgement of the biological fact. This child, if it was indeed Michael's, was her grandchild. That connection, however unwanted, however complicated, would stir a conflicting sense of duty deep within her. She would demand proof, a paternity test, of course. This would be non-negotiable. But she would also, perhaps, ensure that Jacinda had access to medical care, not out of compassion, but out of a need to control the situation and protect the unborn child who was, through no fault of its own, a part of her family. She would become the secret's keeper, a role she despised but one she had to assume to manage the fallout. Leaving Jacinda, Carly would be left alone with the crushing weight of the knowledge. What to do next? This is the eternal dilemma for Carly, her impulse to protect her children at all costs versus her understanding that some truths, however painful, cannot be buried forever. She would be torn in two. One part of her would scream to bury the secret, to find a way to make Jacinda disappear, to pay her off, to do whatever it took to preserve Michael and Willow's happiness. She would see their smiling faces, Wiley's innocent joy, and the thought of being the one to shatter that perfect picture would be agonizing. But the other part of her, the part that has lived through a lifetime of secrets and their catastrophic unravelings, would know that this path leads only to greater ruin. She knows Sonny, she knows Jason, she knows the history of Port Charles. Secrets fester. They grow in the dark and emerge more poisonous than before. If Michael were to find out from someone else, from Jacinda in a moment of spite, from a leaked medical report, from a town gossip, and then discover that his own mother knew and said nothing, the betrayal would be unforgivable. It would destroy her relationship with him. It would be a wound that might never heal. This internal debate would rage within her as she went through the motions of her day, managing the Metro Court, attending meetings, smiling at family gatherings, all while carrying the destructive truth inside her like a live grenade. Every interaction with Michael would be torture. He would talk about his future with Willow, about plans for a vacation, about how happy he was, and Carly would have to nod and smile, her heart breaking with every word. The guilt would be an acid eating away at her. She was lying to him through her omission, and for a woman who values loyalty above all else, this is a special kind of hell. Her confidant in this crisis would almost certainly be Jason Morgan. Jason is her touchstone, her unwavering pillar of support. In his quiet, steady presence, she would find a safe space to unravel. She would pour out the whole sordid story, the suspicion, the confrontation, the confession. Jason would listen, his expression grim. He would not offer easy solutions or emotional platitudes. He would assess the situation with the cold, logical precision of a strategist. His advice would be straightforward. Michael has a right to know, Carly. But it has to come from you. Before he hears it from anyone else. He would reinforce what she already knew in her heart, that the damage from the secret itself is often dwarfed by the damage from the deception surrounding it. He would stand ready to back her play, to help her manage the practicalities, to be the enforcer if Jacinda stepped out of line, but the ultimate burden of disclosure would rest squarely on Carly's shoulders. The decision to tell Michael would be one of the hardest of her life. She would choose the time and place with extreme care, somewhere private, secure, and away from prying eyes and ears. Perhaps at the boathouse, a place filled with its own history of family drama and resolution. She would ask to see him, her tone serious enough to convey the gravity of the situation without sending him into a panic. When he arrived, curious and unsuspecting, she would struggle to find the words. How do you tell your son that a single mistake is about to detonate the beautiful life he has built? Michael, we need to talk. Please, sit down. Her voice would be thick with emotion. What I have to tell you is, it's going to be very difficult to hear. And I need you to know, before I say anything, that I am telling you this because I love you more than anything in this world, and I cannot stand by and watch you be blindsided. She would take a deep, shaky breath, her eyes pleading for his understanding before the storm hit. I recently found out something. Jacinda is pregnant. The silence that followed would be deafening. Michael's mind would reel, trying to process the information, to connect the dots. And then, the inevitable, horrifying question would form in his eyes. Carly would meet his gaze, her own filled with tears. She says you're the father. The impact on Michael would be immediate and devastating. It would be a physical and emotional sucker punch. Disbelief would be the first defense. That's not possible. It can't be. She's lying. He would grasp for any alternative explanation, his mind racing through the timeline, trying to find a flaw in the story. But as Carly would gently, painfully, provide the context, the timing, Jacinda's certainty, the reality would begin to sink in. The disbelief would curdle into a sickening horror as the full implications unfolded before him. He would see Willow's face in his mind. He would think of Wiley. He would think of the trust he had built, the promises he had made, the future they had planned. All of it, shattered in an instant by a secret from his past. His reaction would likely be a complex torrent of emotions. Anger at Jacinda for her deception, for appending his life. Anger at himself for the momentary lapse that led to this catastrophe. And most profoundly, a soul-crushing guilt and fear over what this would do to Willow. The knowledge that he was about to inflict immense, undeserved pain on the woman he loved would be a heavier burden than any business failure or physical threat he had ever faced. He would have to tell Willow. This would be his cross to bear, his impossible task. Carly would offer to be there, but he would almost certainly refuse. This was his mistake, his responsibility. The scene of him confessing to Willow would be one of heartbreaking anguish. Willow, a woman who embodies strength and compassion, would be utterly destroyed. The betrayal would strike at the very core of her being. The man she trusted implicitly, the father of her child, the rock of her life, had been unfaithful. The life they had built together would suddenly feel like a beautiful, fragile lie. Her trust, once absolute, would be in ruins. The fallout would be swift and brutal. Michael and Willow's relationship would be thrust into its most severe crisis. There would be tears, accusations, and a profound, echoing silence filled with pain. Willow might ask him to leave. The shared home that was their sanctuary would become a prison of memories and heartache. Michael would be racked with guilt, desperate to find a way to fix the unfixable, to atone for an act that had consequences far beyond his own life. And all the while, the pregnancy would continue. Jacinda, now out in the open, would become a visible, looming presence. Her motives would be scrutinized by everyone. Is she a victim of circumstance, a woman facing a difficult situation alone? Or is she a cunning manipulator, using a child as a weapon to secure wealth and status? Her every move would be analyzed. Would she demand financial support? Would she insist on being a part of the Corinthos family? Would she use the child to drive a permanent wedge between Michael and Willow? The power dynamic would have shifted, and Jacinda, once operating from the shadows, would now be a central, disruptive figure in the saga. For Carly, the drama would be far from over. Having been the one to expose the secret, she would now have to navigate the explosive aftermath. She would be torn between supporting her son through his self-inflicted crisis and comforting Willow, whom she loves as a daughter. She would have to manage the family's public image, dealing with the inevitable gossip that would sweep through Port Charles like wildfire. She would also have to confront the reality of Jacinda and the impending birth of her grandchild, a child born of deception but innocent nonetheless. The secret of Jacinda's pregnancy, discovered by Carly, is more than just a plot twist. It is a catalyst that exposes the fragile nature of trust, the devastating cost of secrets, and the complex, often painful, lengths a mother will go to protect her child. It forces every character to confront their own vulnerabilities and compromises. Michael must face the consequences of a single choice and fight for the family he may have lost. Willow must find the strength to survive a profound betrayal and decide if forgiveness is possible. And Carly, the matriarch, must guide her family through a storm of her own uncovering, proving once again that in Port Charles, the most dangerous wounds are not those inflicted by enemies, but those born from the secrets we keep from the ones we love the most. The pregnancy is not an end, but a brutal, messy, and emotionally charged new beginning, ensuring that the lives of everyone involved will be irrevocably altered, their paths forever changed by the truth that Carly, with a heavy heart and a resolute spirit, was forced to bring into the light. Jacinda sat alone in her small Port Charles apartment, hands trembling as she held the pregnancy test. The two pink lines stared back at her with a force she felt in her chest like a pounding heartbeat. No, no, this can't be happening, she whispered, placing a hand against her flat stomach as if the gesture could undo the truth. She slid down the wall, trying to catch her breath, but all she could see was Michael's face, his warm smile, the honesty in his eyes, the way he trusted her. How am I supposed to tell him, she murmured, pulling her knees to her chest. She didn't hear the soft buzz of the phone across the room or the knock at the door. She stayed frozen, letting the weight of the secret settle like a stone. Meanwhile, Michael Corinthos stood in the Quartermain kitchen sorting through paperwork for ELQ, unaware that his world was moments from shifting. Willow was out at the hospital finishing a shift, and Wiley was upstairs asleep, giving him a moment of calm. But calm never lasted in Port Charles. Where did I put that contract? He muttered to himself, flipping through files. His phone lit up with a notification, a missed call from Jacinda. He paused, frowning. That's strange, he said quietly. She rarely called him unless it was work-related. He considered calling back but decided he would find her later. Something about the missed call tugged at him, though, a whisper that something wasn't right. Carly Spencer, on the other hand, wasn't thinking about either of them. She was focused on the shipment inventory at Bobby's, trying to distract herself from the undercurrent of tension that always surrounded her. But she had a knack for noticing things people didn't want her to notice. So when she saw Jacinda outside the cafe earlier that day, looking pale and distressed, clutching a small paper bag, Carly's instincts kicked in. She told herself not to interfere. She told herself Jacinda was Michael's assistant, not her responsibility. But Carly Spencer had never been one to ignore a gut feeling. And Jacinda's face, stricken, almost frightened, stayed with her. Hours later, Jacinda washed her face, trying to erase the evidence of her meltdown. She stared at herself in the mirror. Get it together, she whispered. She tried to rehearse what she would say to Michael, but the words tangled each time she imagined Willow's face, Wiley's laugh, or the life Michael had built. He deserves the truth, she told herself. But fear clawed at her over and over. She grabbed her coat and purse, deciding she couldn't hide in the apartment forever. Carly showed up at the same apartment building minutes later, scanning the mailboxes until she found Jacinda's unit number. She hadn't planned on confronting her, but the worry nagged at her. She walked up the steps, heels clicking on the floor, and paused at the door. She heard faint rustling inside, then footsteps approaching. When the door opened, Jacinda blinked in shock. Miss Spencer? What are you doing here? Carly crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe with that unshakable calm that unnerved most people. I saw you earlier, Jacinda. You looked upset. Jacinda attempted to smile, but her body betrayed her, tension radiating off her in waves. Carly narrowed her eyes. Is something wrong? Jacinda swallowed hard. No. Everything's fine. I just wasn't feeling well. Carly didn't break eye contact. You sure about that? Positive, Jacinda replied, voice trembling just enough for Carly to hear. She tried to shut the door politely, but Carly placed a hand on it, stopping her gently but firmly. Jacinda, listen. I know when someone is hiding something. And you're hiding something big. Jacinda froze, her breath catching. Carly stepped inside quietly. You can tell me. I'm not here to judge you. Jacinda shook her head quickly. No, you can't be here. I need to go. Please, Carly. Carly's expression softened, but her tone was unyielding. Is this about Michael? Jacinda stumbled back as if struck. No. Of course not. Why would it be? Because, Carly said slowly, watching her carefully, you just reacted like it is. Jacinda turned away, gripping the edge of the table as if it could hold her together. I can't do this right now. Carly stepped closer, voice gentle. Jacinda, what happened between you and Michael? Jacinda spun around, tears gathering. Nothing. It was one night. One stupid night that never should have happened. Carly felt her stomach drop. One night? She paused. Are you telling me you slept with Michael? Jacinda covered her face. It wasn't supposed to happen. He was upset about something, and we were talking, and it just happened. We agreed to forget it. We said it was a mistake. Carly felt the shock roll through her, but she kept her voice calm. And now? Jacinda took a shaky breath. I'm pregnant. Carly blinked. The room fell silent, as if everything paused. Then Carly spoke quietly. The baby is Michael's? Jacinda nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. Carly steadied herself. Does he know? No, Jacinda whispered. And he can't. Please, Carly. You can't tell him. You can't tell anyone. Carly's first instinct was disbelief, then anger, fear, protectiveness, all at once. Jacinda, this isn't something you can hide. Michael deserves to know. Jacinda shook her head violently. No. If Willa finds out, if anyone finds out, it will destroy his life. I can't be the reason his marriage falls apart. Carly exhaled slowly, trying to balance compassion with truth. Jacinda, hiding this will destroy you. And eventually, secrets always come out. Jacinda turned away, pressing a hand against her stomach. I can leave town. I can take care of this myself. Michael doesn't need to know. No one needs to know. Carly's tone sharpened. Running isn't the solution. She stepped closer. You are carrying Michael's child. You can't just disappear. Jacinda whipped around. What choice do I have? I made a mistake. I don't want to blow up his life. Carly swallowed, her eyes softening. Jacinda, you need support. You need someone to talk to. But you cannot lie to Michael about something this big. Jacinda shook her head again, spiraling. Carly, please. If you tell him, he'll hate me. Willow won't forgive him. Everything will fall apart. Carly looked at her with a mixture of frustration and sympathy. It's not your job to protect him from the truth. Jacinda stared at Carly, voice cracking. Promise me you won't say anything. Please. Carly hesitated, and that hesitation cracked Jacinda open. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. Carly sighed and sat beside her. Jacinda. I don't want to hurt you. But I can't promise something like that. Jacinda cried harder, shoulders shaking. Then everything is over. Carly placed a tentative hand on her arm. You need to breathe. You need to calm down. We're going to figure this out. But you can't expect me to keep this from Michael. Jacinda pulled away, panicked. I have to go. She grabbed her purse, rushing toward the door. Carly followed her. Jacinda, wait! But Jacinda was already down the hall, wiping tears as she fled. Carly stood there, torn. She wanted to march straight to Michael and tell him everything, but she knew the fallout would be nuclear. She closed the door behind her and took a steadying breath. Damn it, she murmured. Why does this stuff always land on my doorstep? Jacinda wandered through the streets of Port Charles with no destination in mind. She found herself at the pier, sitting on a bench as the cold wind whipped around her. She pressed a hand against her abdomen again. What am I going to do? She whispered. Meanwhile, Michael found Carly hours later at Bobby's. Hey, Mom, he said, noticing her tense posture. You okay? Carly turned, startled. Michael. Yeah. I'm fine. She forced a smile that he immediately recognized as fake. Mom, he said, stepping closer, what's going on? Carly hesitated, then shook her head. Nothing you need to worry about. Michael frowned. Jacinda called me earlier. Actually, she called twice. Did something happen with her? Carly tried to keep her expression neutral, but her eyes flicked away for a split second, just long enough for Michael to notice. Why are you asking that? She said too quickly. Michael crossed his arms. Because you know something. Carly's silence confirmed it. Mom, what happened? Carly inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Michael. Jacinda is dealing with something personal. And I don't think it's my place to say anything. Michael's eyebrows knit together. Mom, if it affects me, I need to know. Carly looked up at him with a conflict so raw it startled him. Michael, you need to talk to Jacinda. And you need to do it soon. Michael shook his head. Why? What did she tell you? Carly opened her mouth but closed it again. I can't be the one to say it. But you deserve to hear the truth from her. Michael stepped back slightly. The truth about what? Carly's silence stretched. Mom. Tell me. She looked at him, eyes heavy with worry. I can't. Michael exhaled in frustration. Fine. I'll find her myself. He grabbed his coat and rushed out before Carly could stop him. At the pier, Jacinda tried to compose herself, but everything felt impossible. She heard footsteps behind her and stiffened. Jacinda? Michael's voice echoed through the quiet air. She turned slowly, eyes wide. Michael approached her with concern etched in his face. Are you okay? You called me earlier.